Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Glyphs. We shall be starting in just a short while. Until then, to all the audience who have joined in, please put in your name and the city that you have joined in from on the chat box. We would love to connect with all of you. Again, a very warm welcome to all of you. That is the QR code that you can scan to become a part of the Glyphs community. Welcome again, and we shall be starting in just a short while. Hello, namaskar, and a very good evening to all the viewers from India and from across the globe. One more lovely evening and one more episode of New Passions and Research and Contemporary Dance. Stay tuned as we have a lovely interaction with our guests. To the audience, we shall be recording this episode for quality purposes. Glyphs essentially means the representation of a character. And what better way there is to identify what a person truly is than to observe what he loves from within him. That's why the name Glyphs. It also stands for being a symbol that represents something beyond the face value. The three symbols or the three glyphs that you saw in the logo represent what the concept is all about. They stand for create, connect, express, or CCE. Like we all know, hashtag passion matters. Glyphs is a channel where you indulge in to identify the passion created within you, connect with each other, and openly and ingenuously express your thoughts and passions. The purpose of this channel is to create a community of like minded people who share a common drive for passion. Passion is the force that motivates you to achieve success and happiness to build a better life. It is something that allows you to be inherently yourself. Your passion can be singing, photography, painting, playing an instrument, or even something as different as collecting items, cycling, or sports. This might be something that you are not necessarily doing as your work. In fact, it is better if you have a passion that helps you unwind and enjoy your own company. The Glyphs community is meant to encourage us to keep pursuing our passions. It is a global community who sees, learns, and appreciates the things that we do. It is also an avenue where you can showcase your own passion and Be inspired to explore a new passion. You know you got it. We know you got it. Now, let the world know you got it. And that's exactly what we are here to do: create, connect, express. And so, again, a very warm welcome again on this wonderful Sunday evening. I am your host, Kavita Avasti, and it is an absolute pleasure to welcome all of you to the 46th episode of this wonderful channel where we showcase your passion. To the audience, while we talk to our guests, please ensure that the chat box is alive with your comments and your appreciation. And to our viewers on Facebook who have joined us, we are listening to you too. So please feel free to put your comments on the Facebook page, which is live right now. Friends, have you ever thought about this? If humans were to disappear today, the earth would start improving tomorrow. But if ants disappear today, the earth would start dying tomorrow. Ants, something that we every day of our lives see, and yet, how many of us have ever thought of studying these little creatures? Nutan Karnik, believe it or not, she had started out with studying wasps, but an allergy for a wasp sting converted this into a passion for studying ants. And now she says, I am in love with ants. Nutan's mother, Mrs. Anjali Pisorkar, inculcated the love for nature in her. She was also very highly inspired by her mentor, Mr. Kiran Purandare, who she met when she was a kid. After finishing her master's in genetics from Pune University, she joined the Center for Ecological Sciences to work with Professor Raghavendra Gadakkar. Joining his research group
Gayatri, can you take over?
All right, so we're facing some small little technical glitches. I'm going to take it on this. Like joining this research group was a turning point in Newton's life, and this was the start of her passion for studying ants and ant behavior. So Newton, welcome to our show. We
Hi.
see ants day in and day out, and never even do we give a second thought to study what these creatures do throughout the day. Most of us have very typical ideas of studying, maybe engineering, maybe medicine. So why ants? What is it that made you study ants? Please share with us.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the nice introduction. So to give a honest answer to your question, I study ants because it keeps away boredom. There has never been a dull moment when I'm watching an ant colony, and I think they are one of the most amazing creatures on the earth. They are fun to watch, easy to study, and they are all around us, but still we know very little about them. And you see they are existing on earth for past 14 million years, so that way they are kind of super senior citizens of the world. And as you know, in the course of evolution many animals became extinct, but ants are still very much there. So there is a lot to learn from ants because they know how to survive through all kinds of challenges in the environment. And I think it will be very helpful for us if we study ants and get to know the survival strategy they have used over all these years. Now, what happens is that many times the only discussion that we hear about the ants is like, oh, there are so many black ants in my house or so many red ants in my house, and I want to get rid of them. But what we need to understand is that they are a very important and inseparable part of our nature. And though there are more than 13,000 ant species in the world, they are usually distinguished into only two categories: the ants that bite and then the ants that don't bite. But once you start studying them, then you will know that there is so much more that these ants have to offer to us. And I will just give you an idea about the number. If you measure the weight of all the animals in the tropics and compare it with the weight of all the ants put together, then ants constitute almost about 25% of the total animal weight. Professor E.O. Wilson, he is the most famous ant researcher in the world, once documented 200 species of ants from one single tree. So here we are not only talking about their numbers, but we are also talking about their diversity. And we cannot underestimate them because they are small. Uh, Based on their sheer number, ants can perform very complex tasks. There is a group of ants called army ants. Many of you must have heard about them. These ants build bridges of their body to overcome the obstacles in their path. So whenever there is a gap, the leader ant slows down. The leader ant slows down, and the rest of the colony that is following the leader ant continues to build bridge using their body on top of each other until the gap is closed. And they follow very simple rules to do this such kind of complex jobs. Now, if you think of why these ants are so successful on the earth, there are many reasons. First is because they have a tendency to cooperate with each other. Just like us, they also live in a joint family, and all the members perform their assigned tasks. They help each other, and the colony acts like a super organism. Now, ants can live in a variety of environment. They can build a variety of nests, and they also eat different kinds of food. Some ants eat seeds, insects. Some ants eat, drink nectar from the flowers, and then there are also some ants who totally live on fungus. They also make very effective use of chemicals to talk to each other. Now, we always say that one has to work hard like an ant. But these ants are not just the hardworking individuals, but they are also farmers who can grow fungus in their fungal gardens. They are soldiers who fight the wars for their colony. They are intelligent weavers who can stitch leaves and make beautiful nests on the trees. And they are also builders who construct houses underground. Now, let's say if all the ants vanish from the world, then what will happen? So it will be a total disaster. Ants have so many roles to play. They are the natural pest controllers. They eat other insects and keep their population under control. Then many ants also live on dead animals or insects, and they act as scavengers in nature. So imagine the pileup of garbage in the world in the absence of ants. And then there are many animals who have ants on their menu. So they have a place in the food chain also. They also act as ecosystem engineers. Uh, Ecosystem engineers means when they construct nests underground, through their movement, the soil gets aerated, which is helpful for the crops. And many species of ants eat seeds. And the process of carrying these seeds from one place to the other, they help in seed dispersal. Then they also have symbiotic relationship with many plants. In fact, many plants are totally dependent on some species of ants for pollination. So now you will get an idea that even though the ants are small, they have a huge impact on the environment. So I think the list of reasons for why one should study ants is very big.
Thank you, Nutan. I think the next time we look at ants, we're going to probably look at them in a very different
Yes.
light.
Yes.
So, to the audience, while Nutan is talking, in case you have any questions for her, please do put them in the chat box and she'll be happy to answer them later in the episode. All right. So they say, Nutan, that if you add the mass of the humans in the world, it would equal the mass of the ants in the world. Wow.
Yes.
So 12,000 species of ants exist in the world. In fact, I think these species are all over the world except the Antarctica.
Yes.
So how do you even manage to get hold of them to study these ants? How do you do that?
So basically, we study ants either in the field or in the laboratory. And when the experiment is conducted in the field, we can study the ants without disturbing their nest. But if we need to observe what happens inside the colony, then we have to bring the whole colony from the field to the lab. And that's when the fun part starts. I will show you how we do it. Can you go to slide number 1? Yes. So what we do is that first we go to the field and locate the nest of the ants that we study. I study the ants called Dicama, and they live in small colonies. Though we know where to search for these ants, sometimes it so happens that we have to spend hours locating the nest. And as you will see in the first photo, this is how the nest looks. Then we carefully start digging around the colony, taking care not to damage any part of the nest. Can you go to the, okay, just 1 minute. Yeah. And usually we have to dig for some 2 to 3 feet. Then we start opening the chambers one after the other. A typical colony of these ants has 3 to 4 chambers. We can have the next photo. Yes. So as we see in the third photo, the guard ants usually stay in the upper chambers, and then the rest of the ants stay with the brood in the lower chambers. And brood is their babies, that is the eggs, larvae, and pupa, which the ants keep neatly in the brood chambers. We can have the next photo here. You can see in the next photo one such chamber where all the cocoons are kept together. And they also have a separate waste chamber at the end where they dump the waste. So see, even the ants are hygienic. So once we find this chamber, we know that we have reached the end of the colony. Then what we do is that we collect each and every ant along with their brood. And it is also very important not to miss the queen ant, because usually the colony doesn't survive without the queen. So we cannot let any individual escape. Then we bring them back to our lab. Now to keep these colonies in maximum comfort, we make artificial plaster of Paris nests, which are called as formicarium. We can have the next photo. You can see one such nest in the lower photo. We cover the chambers in the colony with transparent glass plates so that we can observe these nests. Then we also catch termites and grasshoppers for them, which is their favorite food. We give them water, a diluted solution of honey, and then we cover this tray with a black sheet of paper so as to mimic the underground condition. Then as these ants are used to a constant temperature and humidity, we keep them in air-conditioned room with fixed temperature and humidity. So many times visitors coming to our lab envy the ants because we bring food for them, we keep them in air-conditioned rooms. We also keep their colonies clean because we do not want any contamination or fungus growth in the colonies. So now here in the photos, you can see that the collected ants have nicely settled inside the chamber. Once the ants are rested, we count all the ants collected, including the eggs, larvae, and pupa, as we need this documentation for our study. Now in the dicama ants that we study, the workers and the queen look exactly the same. They do not have any caste-wise differences. So in order to identify them, we mark each and every ant with a unique color code. And we use 8 different quick drying non-toxic colors and mark them on 3 different positions on their body. So by using different combinations of paints and positions on the body, we can mark hundreds of ants. And in the last photo, you can see one such freshly painted colony, and it looks very beautiful when the paint is fresh. This work requires a lot of patience as we are picking up a live wriggling ant who is trying to sting us, but still we have to manage putting a tiny spot of paint on her without hurting her. And another funny thing is that these ants keep grooming themselves all the time to keep their bodies clean, and the paints that we use are not permanent. So it's almost like our routine fight with them. They remove the paint, we apply it. Again, they remove it, we apply it. So once we have a mark colony ready, then we start our behavioral observations. Our lab has developed an ethogram. Ethogram is a set of behavior codes to record every behavior of the ant. So we spend days sitting in front of the colony and collect all the data using these behavioral codes. Now, many times people ask me, why do you have to sit for hours? Why can't you just set up a camera and do video recording? But in our experience, human eye can capture a lot more than a video camera. Again, there are issues like angle, resolution, and the ants keep moving between the chambers. And personally, I like to watch ants directly rather than watching it through the lens. So that's roughly the process involved behind doing behavioral experiments.
All right. Amazing. Getting them, catching hold of them, and putting paint. This is something so unheard of. This is really amazing. So, like Nutan shared, queen ants, soldier ants, colonies have their own social structure. In fact, these ants are known to have super intelligence, and they have survived even the ice age.
Yes.
So many different kind of specialities and unknown facts about this fascinating little creature. So, Nutan, what is so special about these ants that you study?
As I told you, the name of the ants that I study is dicama. And if you look at them, they look like any other big black ants, but they are special in so many ways. Can you please go to the next slide? Yeah. So these ants have a typical way of building the nest. They build a slightly elevated mound on the ground, and just look at the way these ants decorate their nest. As you can see in the photos, the entrance is decorated with small sticks, colorful bird feathers, then colorful flower petals or dead spider skin molds. And it is this unique way of decorating the nest that helps us in locating their colony in the field. Now you must be wondering, why do they decorate the nest? So many years ago, a scientist, Mark Moffat, who was visiting us in Bangalore at that time, observed that these ants were drinking the morning dew which got collected on the bird feathers. Interestingly, these ants were using these decorations as a ready source of water at the nest entrance. And it is also possible that these decorations help them, the ants, to locate their colony. Dicama is one of the few ant species which have an aesthetic sense and they decorate their nests so well. Can you go to the next slide? Huh. So now here is a colony of Dicama ants, and another special thing about them is that here the queen and the workers look very similar. That's why we had to mark each and every individual. But now why is it special? Because in majority of ant species, the queen and workers look different. The queen is usually bigger in size and it has wings. So while studying these ants, it's always a challenge to identify the queen because here everybody looks similar. But luckily there is one interesting difference. Next slide, please. In Dicama colony, all the ants have small wing buds on both the sides of their body. These wing buds are red in color and they look like jewel. So they are called as gemma. The left photo here is a scanning electron micrograph showing the location of the gemma on the body. And in the right photo, you can see the red color gemma more clearly. Now, what is more remarkable is that only the ants who possess this gemma can become the queen or gamergate of the colony. I'm using the word gamergate here. Gamergate is the mated egg-laying worker in the colony, and to differentiate this individual from the typical queen of many ants, we call her as gamergate. Now, coming back to gemma, these gemma on their body are involved in releasing a signal by which the ants can attract males, mate with them, and lay eggs. Now, this process of attracting a male is also very interesting. The virgin gamergate of the colony goes outside the nest and stands on some elevated structure. Then what she does is that she rubs her hind legs across her gaster and emits a signal. This behavior is called as sexual calling. If there are males nearby, one male visits her, they mate, and then she walks back in the nest. As this is a female-dominated society, the males do not have much role to play after mating, and usually they are discarded by the colony. And then the newly established gamergate starts laying eggs in the colony. Now we know that at a time there is only one gamergate in the colony who lays the eggs. Now, how she makes it possible? Why other workers do not mate and lay eggs or challenge her? So another special thing about Dicama is that in most of the unknown species of this genus, the gamergate mutilates the gemma of every newborn individual. What happens is that as soon as the ant comes out of the cocoon, a group of workers try to hold the newborn captive. And then the gamergate comes and pulls out the gemma of the newborn with her mandibles. Now, can you guess why she does that? Because mutilating the gemma, she's making the workers sterile and she makes sure that they don't mate but keep working for the colony. Now, many times it also happens that the newly born ants tries to escape the mutilation, but workers still catch her again and bring her to the gamergate. And as soon as the gemma are mutilated, the ant undergoes permanent neurological changes in her body, which makes her sexually unattractive and submissive. So by way of mutilation, the gamergate ensures that no one in the colony lays eggs except her. And the mutilated worker has no other option but to work for the colony. Now, when the gamergate dies, the next ant to eclose will not have anyone to mutilate her because the workers who are already mutilated cannot mutilate others. So this newborn ant will retain her gemma. She will take the dominant position in the colony and she starts mutilating the gemma of all the newborns who eclose after her. And that's how the cycle continues.
Amazing. Talk about women's superiority. Wow.
Yes,
amazing.
completely.
That is absolutely. So to the audience, we've heard so many interesting facts and so much that we realize that we don't know about them. Now it's time to add to our knowledge about these little wonders. We have something called as the Glyphs quiz. This is where I shall be asking you some questions about these little ants. And let's see, we would want the audience to answer them in the chat box. So please pay attention and I will be waiting for your answers. Please remember to select panelists and attendees when you're putting in your answers. So for the first question, we all do know that we've very lately become very health conscious and we've all switched to honey instead of sugar. So we know that honeybees store the honey in their hive. There is a species of ants that store sweet nectar and plant fluids in their bodies. In fact, sometimes the workers' tummies with honey inside them gets so swollen that these ants look like small round grapes and they simply cannot walk. My question is, what is the name of these ants? We would like you to put your answers in the chat box. What is the name of these ants who store this liquid in their tummies? What are they called? Come on, guys, we have a lot of people here. Take a guess. Yes, Aditya, that is right. They are called honey ants, yes, or honey pot ants, of course. They get attached to the ceiling of the nest, in fact, and whenever the other ants in the colony are hungry, they touch the tummies of these hanging ants and get the honey. Amazing. In fact, in the year 2011, BBC had made a film on the natural history of the honeypot plant in the desert of Arizona called Empire of the Desert Ants. All right. So moving on to the next question. We all have heard about the weight lifting records of ants, and sometimes they can lift up to 5,000 times their body weight. But do you know that ants have made records in the long jump too? So there is a species of ants that is 2 centimeters in length, but while catching a prey, it can jump as long as 20 centimeters. Now, what are these ants called? The ants which can jump as long as 20 centimeters. There is a typical name for these ants. What are they called? We would like to see some answers in the chat box. Yes, you can't take so much time. It means you're probably Googling. That's not allowed. It's a very logical answer if you come to think of it. Yes, Rahul, that is right. They are called jumping ants. So, you know what? If you compare it with the human world records in long jump, you will realize that humans can jump as long as only approximately 4 times their height or their length. But these ants, the jumping ants, can jump as long as 10 times of their length. In fact, some of these species are also found in India. Okay, and coming to the last question. To the audience, please change your setting to panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your answers. So to the third question. So do you know that just like humans, ants too live in a joint family system, like Nutan was sharing. An ant colony consists of a queen ant who lays the eggs in the colony. Then there are worker ants who are the daughters or the sisters of the queen, and they work for the colony. Then there are the male ants who leave the colony after a short while to mate with the future queens from other colonies, and they all take care of each other. Now, obviously, so many types of ants in one colony can definitely form some huge colonies. The largest ant colony in the world is a super colony spanning more than 6,000 kilometers. What I want you to tell me is, where in the world is this ant colony, which is supposed to be the largest ant colony in the world, spanning more than 6,000 kilometers? Where is this located in the world? Switzerland, Sujata? No, it's not in Switzerland. It's not in France. No, Apurva. And it's not in Brazil. Okay, I'm going to give this one to you. It's in the Mediterranean region of Argentina. In fact, there's an amazing fact here. It has 45,000 nests with nearly 1.1 million queen ants and over 306 million worker ants living here. That's one large family it is. Okay, and moving back to you, Nutan. After hearing all these facts, we know that there must be tremendous amount of patience and persistence involved in this study. Can you share some of the most intricate things that you have done while studying these ants, like something that has really tested your patience, so to say?
Okay, to tell you the truth, I don't have much patience, and that's what I am trying to learn from the ants.
Well, okay.
But even though studying ants is fun, it requires hard work. My research is about a comparative study of two species of dicama ants who look very similar, but they show completely different behavior. As I told you before, in one species of dicama, the gamergate mutilates all her colony members. Now there is another population of dicama where the ants look exactly the same as this mutilating species. But here the gamergate never mutilates her colony members. And we find that even in the absence of this mutilation, there is still only one gamergate who lays eggs in the colony and keeps the colony under control. So here in this non-mutilating species, all the workers get to keep their gemma intact, but still no one tries to mate or lay eggs in the presence of the gamergate. And it was a very surprising discovery. And then we wanted to study if there are any other differences apart from this drastic behavior difference in the mutilation behavior between these two populations. So we did a comparison of these two species at many levels, starting from studying their behavior to constructing a chromosomal map for both the species. And the most patience testing work, I would say, was when we did a comparison based on their body measurements. So in research, if you just say that these two species look very similar, that is not sufficient. You need to establish it by collecting data and doing rigorous statistical analysis. So we decided to measure different body parts of ants belonging to these different populations. Can you go to the next slide? So here I will show you the basic body parts of an ant. The head is on the right hand side and you can see the antenna coming out of it. It is followed by a part called thorax, and then the spiny pointed part in the middle is the petiole, and at the last there is the abdomen. So these are the parts that we learn in our basic biology books. Can you please go to the next slide? Is the next slide on? I cannot see.
Yeah, it's just coming in. Just a minute. Yeah, we just have it there. Yes, of course. What we learned in biology, I think that's all that we did.
Yes. But for doing, in-depth study, we need to consider a lot many body parts.
Yeah, there you go.
So please don't be scared with all these labels. I just want to tell you is that what we did is that we picked up 10 most important body parameters out of all these, and we decided to focus on them. Then the parameters were like head length and head width, or eye length and eye width, then the abdomen length, and so on. So once these parameters were fixed, we wanted to collect ants for the measurement. So we went to different field sites all over Karnataka and Tamil Nadu in search of these two species of ants. We collected few ants from every colony, brought them to the lab, preserved them, labeled them, and measured all these 10 parameters for every ant under the microscope. This we did for close to thousands of ants.
Wow.
I did this work along with my colleague, Dr. Tracy, and then later on, we did the analysis of this huge data. Such kind of studies has to be done very meticulously because here we are dealing with a scale of millimeters, and even one mistake can prove very costly for further analysis of this data. So if there is a mistake, either you have to discard that data or repeat the measurement again for thousands of ants. So very carefully we did this study, and I still remember the whole process of measuring ants under the microscope hours after hours. Then another work I did was studying chromosomes of these two species to see if there is any difference in the number of chromosomes. It is an important criteria to establish them as two different species. I have also worked on human chromosomes before, but isolating chromosomes from ants required different skills altogether.
Absolutely.
For human chromosomes, I was used to isolating chromosomes from the blood, but here for this work, I had to use the brains of these ants. So again, I collected many colonies from the two states, cultured them in the laboratory, and once the cocoon started developing in the colony, I dissected the brains of this pupae or cocoon and followed a specific procedure to isolate the chromosomes and observed hundreds of slides of chromosomes under the microscope. On top of that, here I couldn't use adult ant because they are bigger in size, but the ants inside their cocoons, which are very small and delicate to handle, that's what I had to use because they give a better chromosome preparation. So that was another rigorous patience testing work that I did, but I enjoyed it too.
Wow, 1000 ants त्यांचं डोकं त्याच्यात ना chromosomes.
Yes.
That is some level of minute work that you're doing. Amazing, yaar, amazing. So the audience does have a few questions. We'll come to it after we take this last one more question. I think to the audience, when normal people like us think of an experiment, what is the first thing that comes to our mind? We probably think of test tubes or chemicals or biology or physics labs. I think that's what normal people like us do think. But when people like Nutan do experiments, it is something that we cannot even fathom. It's in a completely different zone. You want to know what she did? Let's just hear of two fascinating experiments that have been done on ants. Nutan, we would want to hear this from you.
Yes. I will tell you about one very interesting experiment done on the desert ant. These experiments are not done by me or by our lab, but I'm just giving you two examples. To give you a little bit of background, when the ants go out in search of food, they should remember the path and return to their nest safely. The ants use several methods to do this. They lay pheromone or chemical trails as they walk so that they can trace these trails on their return journey. And they also use the images of the landmarks and keep matching them on the way back. But in places where there are no landmarks available, like desert, how do they remember the way? It was known earlier that the ants use celestial compass to keep track of the number of turns that they take while searching for food. But they also have to keep track of the distance traveled for successful navigation. But how do they do it? Uh, yeah. Scientists have proved that ants can actually count the steps to judge the distance they have walked. This experiment was done on the desert ant called Cataglyphis by scientists Matthias Wittlinger, Harald Wolf, and Rudiger Wenner. They knew that this ant doesn't use chemical trails, and then there are no visual landmarks available in the desert. So what they did is that they first trained the ants to walk from their colony to the food source, which was kept some 10 meters away through a channel. Now, after the training, these ants were put to a test. They built a second parallel channel little bit away from this original channel. And once the ants reached the food source and picked up the food, then they were placed in the parallel channel. After that, these ants promptly began walking back home. Here, the scientists wanted to see how far these ants will walk before they start looking for their nest. Now, after walking for a distance close to 10 meters in the second channel, the ants stopped walking in a straight line and they began searching for their colony. So this showed that the ants had got an idea about the distance traveled from their colony to the food. So on the way back, once they finished walking for a distance of 10 meters, they started searching for the colony. Now next, what these scientists did was very interesting. For some ants, they cut off the tips of their legs by 2 millimeters. And for some ants, they use pig bristles, म्हणजे actually डुकराच्या मिशा. And they glued them to the legs of these ants and increased the normal length of the legs by 2 millimeters. Now here on the, if you look at the picture of these three ants, on the right hand side, you can see the normal ant. Okay, in the middle, you can see the ant with elongated legs, that is stilts. And on the left, you will see the ants with shortened legs, that is stumps. So when the test experiment started, ants walking on the stilts, that is elongated legs, overshot the distance because now they had bigger stride lengths. And they walk up to 15 meters before beginning to search for the missing nest. On the other hand, ants walking on stumps that are shortened legs, they undershot the distance because they had a smaller stride length and began to search after walking for about 5 meters. So this experiment showed that ants do count the steps while walking. These days we are health conscious and we often use the words like step counter, stride length, but ants have been using this for millions of years. Now I will tell you a story of another funny experiment done on ants. Ants are very hygienic, and when it comes to the disposal of dead ants in the colony, the ants pick up the dead family members and take them to the refuge pile located away from the main nest. Professor Edward Wilson, who is the most celebrated ant scholar in the world, wanted to know how do the ants know when another ant is dead. Can you please go to the next slide? Yes. So here you can see the photo of Professor Wilson. And he observed that even if the ant was lying dead in the nest, on the first day, other ants hardly realized that one of their members is dead. But after 2 days, they seemed to take interest in the dead ant. So Wilson analyzed the chemicals secreting from a variety of decomposing material and found that it is the oleic acid that starts secreting from the dead ant's body, which tells the other ants that, okay, I am dead. So for ants, the smell of oleic acid equals to I am dead signal. Then he decided to create an artificial corpse by using just a tiny drop of folic acid. He gently placed a tiny drop of folic acid on a perfectly healthy ant walking by. It's that ant's bad luck. And the next moment, the other ant close by started antenating this ant, and she just picked her up, put her on the back, and without paying any attention to her protest, dumped her in their refuse pile. So Wilson indeed managed to create a living dead or zombie ant. Only after an hour, when the poor ant managed to clean herself properly, she got admission back in the colony, and then she went on her daily business. See, these ants have brains that weigh less than 1 millionth of a human brain. So it is not surprising that they don't use any complex language but communicate using just 10 to 20 signals. So once you know how the ants communicate, even we can also talk to the ants and make them do what we want them to do.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing knowledge that you've given us. We do have some questions. We will be taking them later. Vandana, Amit, Sudhanva, you have a few questions. Do not go anywhere. Nutan will be back. She will be answering them after that. And she's also going to be back with an awesome finale that we have planned for all of you after the performance of our second guest. So just hold on to your seats. We're coming right back. And before that, over to Amita Godbole, who is going to share how each one of you can also become a part of our ever-growing channel Glyphs. So Amita, over to you.
Thank you, Kavita. We've just heard Nutan talk about her very, very interesting passion. In the same manner, all of us also have different passions that we love to do. May it be photography, traveling, dancing, baking, poetry, or even stamp collecting. Glyphs CCE is a channel that provides you a platform to take this passion of yours across the globe. We currently have a viewership in over 37 countries across the globe. Let us have a quick poll. You will see 3 options in front of you now. Request you to click the option for the way you would like to be part of the Glyphs CCE community. 1. Perform or share your passion on the show. Or you could refer a friend to perform or share on the show. Or 3, join Glyphs CCE as a production partner. Wow. For all our viewers on the Facebook, please comment options 1, 2, or 3, and we will get right back at you. Please click on the options so that we know how you'd like to be part of the Glyphs CCE community, where passion can be portrayed very beautifully. Okay, we have the results right here. 65% can refer someone to our channel. Wow, I'm already looking forward to it. You can see the phone numbers and email ID on the screen right now. So join us on the Glyphs CCE channel, the place where every passion finds a home. Before I hand over to our host, let me take this opportunity to thank her as well. Kavita Avasthi, who's doing a magnificent job, is a fashion designer who owns and runs her own boutique, Osha, for the past 26 years. Thank you, Kavita. Over to you.
Thank you, Amita. Thank you so much. And thank you to our audience for participating in the poll and letting us know who all can be a part of this channel. So moving on to our second guest. They say, dance is emotion in motion. Purvaja Kelkar, a contemporary dancer, she says that as a dancer, she has always looked at emotions through her movements and has always been comfortable expressing them through movements rather than words. And it came naturally to her to look at the body-mind connection as a primary element. She says that when she is having a good day, her body responds differently than when she is exhausted or mentally tired. Emotions that fuel our lives. We have 5 emotions: anger, sadness, fear, disgust, and joy. They are emotions that all of us have felt and all of us have dealt with. We are going to witness some very beautiful and graceful contemporary dance performances by Purvaja, which look beyond the definitions of these 5 emotions. Her performances are based on repetitive movements because these kind of movements help to intensify the subject or the theme of the performance. Purvaja is going to be moving with them, and so she has requested the entire audience to observe the energy and intensity shift in her movements with the music. Anger, very aptly represented by the red color. Purvaja will be performing on the soundtrack the drum song that has heavy drum music. The performance is very high energy to depict the boiling anger that one experiences. And so, time for the first performance of the day. Over to you, Purvaja. Yes, there she is. Wow, that was one amazing performance. Truly, anger. Coming to the next one, sadness. A composition with just notes on the piano. Low energy, slow and soft movements, and hence the color white associated with sadness. It symbolizes what the state of the mind is when one is sad. The track that she's going to be performing on is by Arvo Par called Spiegel im Spiegel. So that's the next performance for you, depicting sadness. Purvaja, over to you. Wow. Absolutely graceful and very flexible indeed. Moving on to the next one, fear. The next track is It's Going to Be Fine. I guess something all of us think of when we are in fear. In this performance, which is a kind of situation based, Purvaja will depict how, when a person is faced with fear, each one tries to tackle it and overcome it. Over to you, Purvaja, again. Beautifully done, Purvaja. Absolutely graceful. Yes, like Asha has says, we can actually feel all the emotions that you're trying to portray. So while Purvaja catches with her breath again, it's time for our brain cells to do a little bit of dance. So again, time for our quiz. Audience, please do pay attention. A pioneer institute in India for contemporary dance. It offers study programs and research modules in movement arts. They launched their first course in the year 2006, and it is the first of its kind in India. This has been established and supported by the Ratan Tata Trust and is located in Bangalore. Which institute is this that I am talking about, which has been established by the Ratan Tata Institute, by the Ratan Tata Trust in Bangalore? I need the name of the institute for movement arts. No, Shilpa, it's not Mudra. Yes, Amrita, that is right. It is the Atakalari Center for Movement Arts. It has been established in the year 1992, and its mission is to spread the reach of contemporary performance arts and to make dance a viable career option for young people. All right, so now that we're talking about so many emotions, a movie which was released in 2015, the director of this movie, Pete Docter, noticed a lot of changes in his daughter's personality while she was growing up, and this became the inspiration for the movie. The movie dealt with the 5 emotions which we are talking about today. Which movie was this? Yes, Amrita, wow, that was instant. A lot of answers. Amrita, Mihir, and Ananya, of course. The 3D computer animated comedy film produced by Pixar Animation Studios and released by Walt Disney Productions. Inside Out, of course it is. Inside Out won several awards, but what we should not miss is that it won the Best Animated Feature at the 88th Academy Awards. Thank you. Thank you so much to the audience for all your instant answers. And now moving on with the next emotion, disgust. A composition by the French composer René Aubray, Titiuband, which has a mix of many instruments. Here, Purvaja has tried to depict her own experience of disgust, and she's going to portray it primarily through her facial expressions and constant contractions of the shoulders, hands, and fingers. Let's watch it. Over to you, Purvaja. Yes, beautifully depicted, of course, it is. And joy, the last emotion and the one that all of us truly enjoy. And so, the color pink. Again, a piano based composition, a happy track by Oliver Arnalds, who is Purvaja's favorite composer. Here we will see her jumping around, moving around with high energy. We have seen high energy in anger too, but now let's witness the same energy but with a different feel in the emotion joy. Again, over to you, Purvaja. What an absolutely beautiful, joyful last performance that was. But don't go yet. Like I said, as promised, here comes our fantastic finale, a unique amalgamation of the two passions that you've just witnessed. We are going to witness a video of the weaver ants moving and building their nest. Nutan will tell us more about these weaver ants, and Purvaja, who has observed the movements of these ants, is going to replicate them. She's going to actually replicate the movements of these ants through her dance. That is true passion. So audience, get ready for an audio-visual treat, presenting our signature fusion, the glyphs Jugalbandi. Here it comes. Purvaja and Nutan, over to both of you.
Okay, I will tell you a little bit information about these weaver ants. If you want to see the supreme example of cooperation and sacrifice in ants, then you should watch a colony of weaver ants building a nest. These ants always build nest on the tree and they have large colonies. These ants stitch together the leaves of the tree, and this process is very interesting. First of all, the worker ants inspect which leaves on the tree are good and flexible for the weaving purpose. Then the worker ants hold such leaves in their mandibles and or in their mouth, and then they try to pull two leaves together. Sometimes one ant cannot do this alone, but if that is if the leaves are not closed. In such a situation, many ants come together. They hold each other's bodies to make a bridge, and then they keep holding the leaves together. The larvae of these ants never make cocoons. Usually, cocoons are made from silk secreted by the larva, and they are made for the larva's protection. Here, the larva, instead of making the cocoons for itself, donates the silk for stitching the leaves. So the ants hold these larvae in their mouth, squeeze them a bit, and then the larva gives silk with which the leaves get stitched. And we will soon see this in the video.
Was such a wonderful and unique end to this lovely episode. Thank you, truly thank you for such a beautiful episode. And on behalf of our audience and Team Glyphs, a heartfelt thanks to both our guests, of course, today, to Nutan and to Purvaja for joining us on our channel. So to Purvaja, we do have a few questions. We are asking them to you. You can answer them later on, of course, since we run out of time. Vandana has to ask, what is the difference between tiny ants and big ants, is what she says, and are some ants poisonous? Amit has asked if ants have evolved themselves and developed new habits over time. And Sudhanva has a very interesting question. He says the wall of an anthill that faces the east or the west direction, they are thicker than the others. So how do they do that? And also, can they grow back their legs? So these are some of the questions to the audience. Nutan will be able to answer them a little later, of course, or on our Facebook page. Do not miss her answers there. So on behalf of our audience and Team Glyphs, a heartfelt thanks to both of you for joining in. And we also thank Shilpa Deshpande and Ninad for introducing today's guests, Nutan and Purvaja, to our channel Glyphs. We also thank our ever-efficient back-end team, Anirudh, our technical head, Ankita and Magesh from DW Place Solutions, Himangi, Apurva, Ashay, Ninad, and Aishwarya in all their efforts for preparing each episode flawlessly. Of course, the founders, Salil, Tanushri, and Gayatri, for innovating this idea and creating this awesome channel. Last but not the least, our wonderful audience from India and from across the globe for watching, supporting, and encouraging us during each episode of our channel Glyphs CCE. In case anyone from the audience is interested in interacting with our guests of today or do want to ask them some questions, please put your name in the chat box right now and we can get you backstage to talk to them. I am your host Kavita Avasti signing off for today. My team and I shall be waiting to see you on our next episode where we introduce you to two new passions, the passion of poetry and Mendi. Passion and talent unlimited. So tune in on Thursday at 7 o'clock and be there to experience a new world of passion. Until then, stay safe, keep exploring your passions, and do take very good care of yourselves. Good night and have a lovely weekend ahead.